All right, yes, by popular demand, we have another pro evaluation of that little show that you love to watch called Yard Crashers. So while our host, Chris, is scouting out the couple and grabbing them up, basically what this show is a contractor goes into a Home Depot or Lowe's or some big box store, grabs up a couple with an awful yard, he follows them home, sounds kind of crazy and stocky a little bit, you know, whatever, that's how it is. And he transforms the yard with a huge team. These are a combination of designers, contractors, and the couple's friends and family. And they do all this in like 2 days. So they're gonna go in, see an awful yard, make a list, put together a design, and then bam, in 2 days, they have a backyard paradise. What we're gonna do is watch, evaluate, put in some pro tips that you can take with you if you are considering an outdoor living space. And I'm gonna give you all the goods behind this of how long it takes, how much it costs, things to watch out for, what I would do differently, and just blast you with a bunch of valuable information that you're gonna love. So let's jump right into the part after they get done with all the demo and start breaking down this design and seeing what kind of cool things we have in store for us. Let's go. One thing as a contractor, as a designer, if you're in business, you start to pick up the vibe of who you're talking to, right? Right away, I get a vibe from her that she's kind of got this bohemian style, this kind of chillax, laid back vibe just by what she's wearing and kind of how she talks, and you pick up on stuff like that. This kind of seems like the kind of couple, in my opinion, that's gonna want something cozy and neat where they can have people over and entertain. I'm picking up on that right away. The other guy, he is well dressed and he's got a Callaway hat on. Well, Callaway makes golf clubs, big golf thing. If you don't golf, well, or if you golf, you obviously know Callaway. So he's probably gonna want something in the backyard that goes along with golf, is what I'm guessing. I bet you Chris will pick up on that, and there's probably gonna be a putting green of some sort or something that is gonna go with her relaxed vibe and him wanting to play golf. All right, so the yard obviously gets neglected. Nobody comes out there, nobody pays attention to this. And why should they? It looks like a mosquito haven. There's leaves and there's stuff all over the place. It's got this old water feature. You know, I imagine we're gonna have the broke up nasty patio. You get the idea. This is a remove, rebuild, get it out of there. Let's start fresh. This obviously needs a lot of love. There's just junk everywhere. There's no theme, no concept, no flow. Hasn't been touched in forever. It's okay. I see this all the time. You might have this. It's cool. We're gonna learn from watching how they're gonna transform this thing. So let's get to the after the demo part, and then we're gonna start breaking this down and giving you out some cool tips along with the different elements that they're gonna spotlight in this. Doy, I knew he was gonna pick up on that. Totally, look at this guy. He's got the Norm Stewart shark kind of thing going on, another golfer. I know a little bit about golf. He's got the Callaway hat. His wife's looking up at him like, you son of a gun, you are not getting a putting green. But you know what? It's on camera. You know he's getting a putting green. Here we go. Let's see. He looks at her.
Baby, can I have a putting green? Please say yes, please say yes. Oh,
Exactly. She's like, don't put golf. He golfs every weekend. Why you got to put it in our yard? I guarantee that's what she's thinking. But you know what? He gets a slice of the pie too, man. She's gonna get something cool. He's gonna get something cool. They'll have people over and they'll love it. Awesome, rock and roll. They're obviously gonna utilize the fact that the house has got this L kind of thing and then it bumps out over there. So they wanna tuck some cool stuff over there. I think they got like a screen door. So they'll step out onto a deck. They'll have a pergola with a shade sail. Now they actually have shade in their yard. And then they're going to, of course, rip out the rest of the yard, more than likely put in some beautiful landscaping, some transitional pieces, his putting green, and they probably got a couple other tricks up their sleeve. Let's see what else they got.
This right here is a water
Oh, there it is. Hello.
A clean gravel pad with a dining table will tie this area together.
Okay, that is cool. That's awesome. Fire and water. A fire and water feature is always awesome. Of course, you can't always build these things because it's all custom. It takes a little bit of finesse. It takes heck of a DIYer or a contractor to put something like this in, but there are cool kits online that have fire and water if you don't have the time or don't want to have to build something like this. But I bet you this thing is going to be spectacular. I'm going to break down how you would build this thing and some of the things you can look out for. So let's get into the goods. First tip I want to give you is after you get everything cleared out and you got a template and you're ready to start working some things in, of course, always start with the design. Don't just start jumping into stuff like this. As you saw, they had a design. But if your house is kind of hodgepodge and it's got a bunch of furniture, get that stuff out of there. And if it's got 3 or 4 different colors of paint on it, pick a color. Paint the house, get it cleaned up, get it power washed. If you got siding, get the house looking nice, because if you put in a spectacular backyard, man, the house is gonna stand out so bad. It's gonna look awful. Make sure you take care of that backdrop, garage, house, whatever it is, and then the landscaping will be in balance with that. So that's your tip number 1. Let's get into it. So Chris has got Rochelle here, and they're gonna do a project together. They're going to build essentially the outdoor kitchen. They're gonna frame it up with pressure treated wood. You'll always wanna use pressure treated as far as your framing and your building material, because it's gonna do well in the outside elements, and it's one of the more cost-effective wood. You're not gonna build the inside that you're probably gonna cover up with like redwood or cedar, expensive wood that looks nice and you'll probably stain and want to do. So he's gonna put this together with her. They're gonna put a nice piece of granite. I think they said quartz on this. I usually use granite. To each their own. I think that granite's gonna do better in more climates than quartz. I think quartz, of what I understand, he says it's weatherproof. You know what? If you know, write in the comments below why I use granite and why they use quartz. You would think I know that answer, but right now it is stumbling me. And if you know why, tell me and tell everybody else. I use quartz. Anyways, they're gonna build this. They're gonna get on to the next thing. Let's keep going. Okay, I do have to point one thing out. As they're building this, they have something called, it's a little triangle. It's to make sure that everything stays square. It goes without saying, but if you are an installer, you're a DIYer, man, you should have a triangle. You should have a square to make sure all your lines are gonna line up. If you build a kitchen and you put a piece of granite on there and the templater comes out there and he's starting to do things, and that thing's not square, all of a sudden, he's not gonna be able to manipulate that granite, and it's gonna look wonky and it's gonna look completely off. So when you're building things, take your time to make sure they are squared up, because it's gonna stick out. If you got an 8-foot run and all of a sudden you put your line like this, from this point to this point might be off like 6 inches. How are you gonna take a 1-inch overhang on a piece of granite to cover up 6 inches? You're not. So make sure you have squares, you have levels, you have everything you need to make sure things line up nice. Okay, case in point, they're using redwood to cover the ugly wood that they use to frame. So let's speed this up, get over to some of the other parts. We're gonna see this as a finished product at the end. Let's go on to another element. Quick. Here's something that you definitely need to know. If you are going to get an outdoor kitchen, you're gonna do a custom water feature, you're gonna have something that's got some serious weight. Do not just put an outdoor kitchen with block or veneer, whatever you try to build it out of, right on a patio, like a paver patio. You want to put a concrete base in there to support the weight. This is going to get really, really heavy, and that is why they poured this. They also, if you see, they got a little plumbing going on there. I don't know if we talked about this yet, but I am guessing that doesn't look like plumbing. That looks like a gas line. Oh, it's for the fire feature. Doy. That's for fire. Here's one thing you're gonna need though. If you're gonna do this in not 2 days, or you coordinate it really, really well, this has got to get looked at by an inspector. You got to make sure that you leave everything exposed, that it's far enough down. They say yes, then you can fill everything over. Then they're going to look at everything after it's hooked up and give you a final inspection. But make sure you get an inspector to come out for something like this. Anything above 6 feet, you typically are going to have an inspector as well. I'm guessing that all the posts that they're putting in here and they're sinking in concrete, they had the holes looked at by an inspector. Then he said, go ahead, you can move on to the build. They fill them in, and then they'll have a final inspection on the framing and the actual structure. So whatever they're building, building, they're getting inspected on site. They probably paid a guy to just be on site, who's off camera, who's an inspector, to just say, yeah, okay, so that everything gets passed. Because if they do all this work and the neighbors call and they didn't get it passed, they'd have to rip all this out. And that's gonna lead to lawsuits and people being very unhappy. So that was a long tip, but everything I said in there, you need to know. So make sure you got footings in there and you got inspections. All right, so the next element that it got is a privacy fence. I am guessing that the neighbors can see right into their yard. So they've set some posts and they got 1x6s and they're gonna run them long ways. It kind of gives that more contemporary Zen style, her bohemian kind of vibe. That dress she was wearing at the big box store kind of gives off that. And I think that this is gonna soften the space and make it more cozy and peaceful and private. And it's gonna look really, really nice. So if you ever consider a privacy fence, they can be panels or they can run along the distance. But if you want to soften them, one thing you can do is you can put plants in front of them, or you can put baskets on them and actually soften it up with flowers. There's all kinds of stuff you can do, but just take into account that it is going to be a bunch of wood that you're looking at. So either pick really, really beautiful wood or cool composite, or soften it with some landscaping. I do have one pro tip for you, for sure, because I've made this mistake. When you are nailing into your posts and going through composite, make sure you get long enough nails. I'm telling you, the weather elements, if they're not long enough, they're gonna pull them out and you're gonna have boards hanging here and there, and you're gonna end up getting a screw gun and putting in screws every couple of seasons just because one board falls here and oh, another month another board falls because you didn't get long enough nails. So make sure you get long enough nails to hold this thing together. Sunshade, okay. If you are going to do a pergola, realize that sun is gonna come through the slats and it's not gonna just keep the elements, sun, out like a structure would that's covered ceiling. So one thing you can do is a shade sail. They actually sell shade sails and you can get them custom online, great places. But one thing you'll see is the hardware this guy's got going on. What you do is you connect that hardware into the corners and you can turn it and twist it so it gets it nice and tight so that thing's not gonna sag. About a shade sail, you will have to take it down. So understand how the hardware works, because you're gonna wanna power wash it probably each season before you put it back up, because you're not gonna leave that thing out over the winter. Some people do, but then it's gonna just get ugly and get destroyed, so don't do that. Okay, so with the water feature, there was a lot of steps involved. You had the building up, you had the concrete footing, you had getting the gas line in, you had getting the plumbing set, you had facing it with tile, then you got the actual, water components where the water's gonna come out, whatever kind of hardware you use. There's all different types of ways you can do that. There's a lot involved in a custom piece like that, but boys, this yard, it's gonna make the yard, I guarantee it. We haven't even seen the whole thing yet. I know it's gonna be awesome. But take into account that if you want a custom piece like that and you're gonna pay somebody, it's probably gonna be quite expensive because of all the different materials and the different timing and the different just skill sets to get it done. That's a highly skilled professional.
The putting green is nailed in place and weighted down with sand.
Okay, I got another tip for you. With a putting green, you are gonna put a compacted base down. It can either be minus or it can be clean rock. I've seen it done both ways. And then you're gonna do something called screenings, or like a very fine clean rock that is more or less something that is kind of squishy and you can rake. Almost like a sand, but it's not, so it's permeable. And then what you do is you take your custom piece of turf and you roll it out and you make it as tight as you possibly can, and you're gonna take in, nails I've seen, little spikes, there's different ways to do it, and you're gonna nail around the perimeter and through different parts of the middle. And then wherever you put the nails in, you're gonna kind of scuff up that turf so you can't see them, but you want it to be nice and tight. And now you see him putting sand down, and then you're gonna rake in sand. That's your bedding sand that's kind of hold it. This is not as easy as it looks. I'm not very good at this, I can tell you that right now. You wanna hire a synthetic putting green company to do this if you can afford it. If you can't, These are the steps, and there's lots of YouTube videos out there that'll show you how to do it, but it's not as easy as it seems. I just want you to be aware of that if you try this yourself. There's a couple steps involved. You want to make sure your grade is done really, really well, because if you're putting and it's kind of bumpy, that ball's going to go all over the place, and it's not going to be very fun to play. So just take that into consideration. Look at that. Okay, there's the money shot right there. Beautiful. I love how they have curves of the gravel leading up, but they broke up the elements and they got mulch that's framing in and obviously holds the moisture for all these plants. That's great. They got the privacy screens, they got the water feature with the fire feature. One cool thing that I didn't point out that I think is neat is they took old furniture and they cleaned it and then they spray painted it a vibrant color. I think that is a really cool way to bring some color into a backyard. Is you can take some furniture and restore it. Outdoor living space furniture is expensive. It ain't cheap. And this is a way that you could put something out there and get some beautiful cushions from like an At Home or a Walmart or a Costco or whatever, and have something that's still comfortable that looks great. You don't have to pay thousands. I'm talking outdoor furniture is no joke. But this money shot right here with the curves, the intimate little cozy spot by the fire water, the putting green. This is an amazing transformation. Let's take it in, and then I'm gonna tell you how much it would cost, how long it would really take to do this, and maybe some things I might tweak a little bit and do a little differently. Here we go.
It is gorgeous. Now you walk out your back door onto a beautiful deck, and you look up and you have a shade sail with some beautiful light.
It's like heaven.
You got a nice little lounge area with a beautiful art piece on the wall. The house is one color. All right.
The house is one color. Told you. You do all this work, and can you imagine if that house was 3 different colors? If they didn't paint all that, it would look horrible. It would not be this kind of reveal at all.
That was worth the crash in itself.
Right?
All right, beautiful. Exactly.
It is so beautiful. It's more beautiful than I ever imagined it even had a chance of being.
You can't see
Love
in the
it.
neighbor's yard anymore because you got this beautiful horizontal fencing. And then
I think that fencing is so important. Seeing into the neighbors when you have this cozy, intimate place kind of takes away from it, and you'd be surprised, like, if they're always out, maybe you don't want to hang out in your brand new yard that much, so think about privacy as well. Okay,
then right in the center,
one more money shot, and we're
gonna
gonna get into the numbers.
Awesome. You can get some
Look at that
plants in
thing.
I really
It's
like
beautiful.
that firewall.
All right, you got the idea. Small backyard, looked horrible, all over the place, nothing worth keeping. They busted everything out. If you are going to do this yourself, I would definitely budget in for a good 6 to 8 weekends, at least, with helping hands. You're gonna have to rent equipment. You're gonna have to get rid of all this stuff. You're gonna have to know where to go. You're gonna have to source all these materials and have them delivered. There's a lot, right? Just in materials and you doing the work yourself, I bet you this backyard with the plants, water feature, gas line, this, that, you're gonna be between 10 and I'd say 13K yourself. Truly believe that. That's probably on the low side, maybe closer to 15. Somewhere in there, that's what you're gonna spend. And you got all that hard-earned sweat equity. But if you wanna sit back and say, I built this, I did this, I think that's cool, man. Go for it. Make sure you get a design by someone who knows what they're talking about, not just one of these people who know how to work a software program and don't charge you much, because sometimes those designs, they're not installable. They don't take into account a lot of things, and then all of a sudden you're just stuck with a pretty picture. Make sure you hire somebody who really knows what they're doing and knows this industry and knows how to build things, okay? That's another thing. How long would this take if you hired somebody, and how much would they charge? If you were to hire a company like mine to do this, you are going to more than likely be in that 35 to 40 range, because we've got all the guys that we got to get out there and pay a decent skilled labor wage, and a 15 bucks an hour. These guys are 25 an hour plus, okay? At least for doing this kind of stuff. You got the equipment, you got the gas involved, you got the transport, all the materials, and the company of course has to make a profit. It's gonna be between, I'd say that 35 to 40, maybe 45, depending on lighting options and whatever else you do. And it's going to take a company I would say 1.5 weeks to do this. So that right there gives you just reference on how incredible this show is and what they do. They do all this in 2 days. 2 days, and they give you a completely new backyard. These videos are really cool. Love doing them. You wanna see another one? Go watch this one right here. This is a great video and it's completely different than this one, and I got way more tips in that one because they just had so many different components and different stuff going on. So check that one out. See you on the next video. This is Bobby K saying creation is everything, so go out and create. See you next time.